Hey everybody, Mike here at the BFH Garage, and guess what day it is? That's right, it's brakes day. I'm in the process of building a Dana 44. I just installed a locker and some gears. Now it's time to move on to the brakes. This particular axle has drum brakes, and as everybody knows, drum brakes can be kind of intimidating to replace. When you look at all the parts that have to go on certain ways, it can be intimidating, and rightfully so. So hopefully today, this video is going to help you out and make sure that you follow the correct procedures to get everything installed correctly. Now, one of the things I would always suggest to people is first get on YouTube or the internet or things like that and watch other people do this so you kind of get a feel for what is required to get this done. You'll see different styles, different ways of doing it, and that will just shed a little bit more information for you so you kind of feel a little bit more confident going into this. Another thing that I always strongly suggest, and I even do it myself because I'm not a brake expert, when you look at all the parts here, the very first thing I do is I take a picture looking down onto the entire brake setup, and then I'll take pictures all the way around from different angles. I just want to make sure that I get this done correctly. Springs going on one side versus the other and which one's on top does make a difference, so make sure that you put them together exactly the way they came apart, unless you're following a job that somebody else did that's horrible. But you want to make sure that these things get put together right. You want to make sure that you get your lubrication on there to keep them from squeaking or binding, and then they'll give you a lot of miles of use. Now, one of the things I always suggest also, just like when I do gears, is to get myself kind of a clean environment here. So I'll take all the parts out of the packaging. I'm going to spray down the drums with some brake clean, get everything else all cleaned up. I'll clean the backing plate that came off of the axle before I start doing anything. So I'll get all that grime and stuff off of there, and then I'm going to lay everything out in an organized manner. As you can see, you have drums, you have your shoes, it does make a difference. It goes side to side on the actual backing plate, so that makes a difference. But you also have lots of different parts that come in different bags. You have left side, right side, then you just have a bag of miscellaneous hardware. You have your cylinders, you have all this stuff, so it's very important. Don't forget your grease. Very important to get all this stuff laid out and make sure that you are putting on all of the required parts, and also making sure that you are putting them in the correct location. So let's get started and get this thing taken apart. Take these apart, it's fairly straightforward, but it could be a pain in the butt if you don't know where to start. So I always start with the little retaining springs here, then I go to the adjuster, and everything else tends to come off easier. Looking at this, you'll see why people like to convert to disc brakes. Disc brakes are far easier to maintain. There is no difference in stopping power. The drum brakes will do the job adequately. The main reason for going to disc brakes is for the ease of maintenance. So let's start, and I'm going to get these springs out of here. There's a pin that comes through the bottom, and this cap here has a slot, and at the top of that pin there's a little tab on there that you turn 90 degrees to keep the cap on. So first thing I'll do is I'll push that down and rotate that, and the spring will come right off just like this. And if you're wondering, yes, I already took pictures of this side as well, because each side's going to be a little bit different than the other, and it's going to look backwards, so I like to reference exactly what I'm looking at. So those come off. Then I'm going to adjust the adjuster till it is in. And that'll make it easier to get that out of there a little bit. And with the springs out of here, you're going to see it things can kind of get up and out of whack a little bit. So I do that, get the adjuster out, and everything else kind of loosens up a little bit. So the next thing I'll do is to get this spring out of here. You simply take this lever, push it this way, and this spring comes right out. Just hang it over there for now. This bottom spring has two little turns in the spring there. Pull that out, that comes straight out. This clamp right here, or this little bracket, has two different holes in it. And let me get you the clean version so you can see what I'm talking about, and it'll make it easier to understand what I'm trying to show you here. So you see it has the bigger hole here, and then it's got the smaller hole there. Well, the bigger hole is to get it on the pin, and then it comes up to the smaller hole which holds it in place. So in order to get this off, you got to turn it almost 90 degrees until it slides up and off of that pin. That comes off. This spring comes straight up and off. Now, the one thing you need to pay attention to is make sure that you have your right bag with the right side, your left bag with the left side, because specifically, these two pins are different between the sides. So make sure you get that correctly. Now from there, you can kind of pull stuff, but you want to make sure where everything's at. So this crossbar thing here has got a spring. I always tell people to replace their hardware, and here's an example why. I already did the other side, and this spring was broken on the other side. So we want to replace this spring. This part you're going to reuse. And then from here, you're going to kind of work that off, and then the spring will kind of come right off the top there. Then it comes right out just like that. Doesn't matter, you're throwing all this away anyway. So one thing I want people to understand is your parking brake lever, you're going to notice that catch right in here. So when you go to put your new shoes on, this bracket right here has to come up through the shoe right there. So that's an easy thing to not understand how that goes without taking a picture and looking at it. So keep that in mind. And then now, the rest of this will kind of just start coming apart just like that. So springs out. Not that it matters, you're not using them. Shoe out. One thing to note before I forget is the order that these go back on, and that's why we take pictures. It's easy to not understand which spring goes first, which one goes second, so make sure you pay attention to that stuff, and that's why we take a picture, and I'll show you that when we get done here. So with that out, we need to remove the parking brake lever here. Now there's a spring here, as you see, that's under tension, and you got to get it just right, and this comes right off. Remember your orientation. Going to put that thing back on could be a pain in the butt sometimes, but usually not too bad. And I will tell you right now, I feel for you guys in the Rust Belt. I can imagine all the stuff you go through while trying to do a simple job like this, or what we would consider a simple job. You guys definitely get your butts handed to you. So I'm gonna leave the parking brake in there for now. I'm gonna turn this over and get my my cylinder out. You will reuse these little bolts, so make sure you keep those. And when you look at this thing, it doesn't want to pop out. There it goes. So sometimes you got to get a hammer and tap on it to get this out. So this becomes trash. And now your backing plate is where it needs to be. I am missing. For a second there, I thought I lost this piece. I was looking for it, and I thought for some reason it broke and it fell off the brakes, but it was tucked underneath, and that goes there. So glad I found that. So to get the parking brake cable off, you sometimes the little retainer is separated, and you can just pull it this way, and the parking brake slides out that way. If not, there's 3 tabs that you need to press in at the same time. If you kind of get it at an angle, push one, push the other, you can kind of work it out, and eventually it'll come out. So when you look at this, those are the 3 tabs I'm talking about. You got to push one in, push the other, and then get the other, and you got to kind of rotate it in order to get it to work. If I'm doing a normal brake job, I'll just leave that in there, but in order to better demonstrate what's going on today, I've elected to take it out so you can see the entire backing plate. That is what we are down to. So now I need to spray it down with brake clean, get it all cleaned up. The one thing you want to make sure you do is get all the gunk from all of the mating surfaces. Anywhere you have a mating surface, make sure you get all that cleaned up. So all these bright spots right here, that's where your brake shoes ride, and those are an area that we're going to need to grease. The original cylinder that's in here has some silicone attached to it. So get all that stuff cleaned up and on both sides, and we'll come back in and put it back together. All right, time for reassembly. First thing I'm gonna do is put lube in all these spots because it's easier to get to it now than later. I know it should go without saying you don't want to get this stuff on your brake shoes. Somebody's bound to do it. Get all that set in there. Next thing I want to do is install the new cylinder. Thankfully, the cylinder only goes in one way, but you always want to have your bleeder at the highest point. So we're going to set that there. Now it's kind of the reverse process of what we did. I'm going to start with my parking brake cable first. That's going to come in here. I'm going to make sure that clamps in or locks in. So now that doesn't come out. You don't really need to put any grease there. I did just because it does wear there a little bit, and then, you know, I'm just thinking it'll hopefully keep that spring from wearing through, but probably not needed by too much. That goes like so. So you remember when I told you to take pictures? This thing can go on a number of different ways. Make sure that you pay attention to which way it came on, or which way it came off, and then get it back down where it needs to be. Here we go. Let's get the shoes on first. Make sure you have your hands relatively clean of any of that grease you're putting on those points. That way we're not gonna get it all over the shoes. But again, you remember I have a little notch hole right there that lines up with this hole, or that notch. Anyway, you want to make sure that gets in there like so. This is going to line up right there with that. That comes in. I'm going to pull the parking brake out just a little bit. I can feel it tightening up just a little bit. There we go. So with that in place there, now I'm going to take that T-piece I was showing you. I already put some lube on that because there's going to be moving parts all over that. And this will move, and that'll help prevent any squeaks and things like that you get. From there, the very next thing that goes on is this return spring. We want to orient it so that way this little loop points up. So I'm going to take and set that on there, and that can stay out of the way for now, but that has to go on before the main spring. Here you have your your wire guide. You'll notice that it has that little lip right there that fits inside of a hole right there. You'll see it. Then we have our mainspring here. So that goes inside through that guide as well as the shoe, and then that will go over that pin. Now, vice grips make this a lot easier for me. You may have other ways of doing it, but for me, this is what I do. And it just makes things a little bit easier. In fact, it makes things a lot easier. So the very next thing I'll do is I'll get this wire in and around, and I'll just lay it there. I'm not really doing anything with it just yet. From there, we have our little bar that goes across. Now make sure you pay attention. This bar, you can see how it goes straight there, and then this side over here has the little notches. That's for the spring. And this needs to go in up against that cylinder. And when you look at the spring you have here, you'll see that this is a smaller hole, that's a bigger hole. This goes to the smaller hole, and then that thing points in. So that's the way that gets oriented. And real quick, this notch here will go over both the parking brake lever as well as the shoe. So those will go right there. grab your other shoe, put it on below, kind of pull that spring back, get that notch just like that. Then you can kind of work it in, and that's all you need for that. Now the very next thing I need is going to be this spring. So this spring comes in from here, and again, vice grips are my friend. Make sure that this notch is able to get up to the shoe, otherwise you're going to be fighting that. There we go. And then that spring goes right over the top. Okay, so we have those set. Okay, what I want to do now is I'm going to get the adjuster and make sure that you have the right side to the side you're working on. I'm going to get that in place because it's easier to do now. It can sit there, that's fine. The next thing I'm going to do is get this spring right here. Now remember, these are specific side to side, so you're going to have to kind of give a little bit of bend in there on this one. This piece right here that has a hook that faces out, so that's going to go in just like that, slide down. Then you have this plate right here. Remember, you have that smaller hole, the big hole, so you have to get it over with that one. And then once you push down on that spring, you can get it to come over like so. And now we need to get that spring up and over that, just like that. And that will give the return for it. With that in place, we can install this spring. Again, hooks down. Then we are moving on to the other springs with that little pin. So let's come over to this side first. This can be kind of, I think tricky is probably an understatement. This is where you wish you had a whole lot of help. But one of the things that I find helps is I get that pin set and I hold it with my hands on this side. I get a pair of needle nose vice grips, or I'm sorry, needle nose pliers. I line up my cap with the pin, and then I push down until that piece comes through. And it may take you several tries to get this. The easier ways with spring pliers, but I'm like you, I do things on my own. I don't spend a lot of money in tools that I don't use a whole lot. So then you do that and you get it turned 90 degrees, it holds in place. Now on to the other side. There we go. Now that's in place. If you got any grease anywhere, make sure you wipe that up. So now that holds everything in place. Now we could take this, make sure you route it around the guide. Then you take this spring piece, you're going to push this in. And under. So make sure you note the orientation of the spring, this bracket in relationship to that bracket. This spring has to go on either side of this gold looking bracket there, and then comes back. And that allows tension to be held on that. All right, with that, we're done with this brake replacement. As you can see, it has all new hardware. We have grease where grease needs to go. All of our routing is correct. Everything's put back together the way it came across. The spring here is in the right orientation. I have tension for adjustment. You could hear the star lever kind of click as it goes. With that, it's ready to go back on. Put the drum on there. We will adjust that star adjuster out just until it starts touching the drum. Back it off just a little bit and it should be set. Hopefully this helped you out. If you guys have any comments, please leave them in the section below. If you have any needs you'd like to see, also leave those in the section below, or you can email me at thebfhgarage@gmail.com.